What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Ernie, Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. Okay, so today's video, we are going to be talking about Hellions number 4 by Zeb Wells and Steven Segovia. And in this issue, we are going to learn which character the Quiet Council expected to not make it back from the mission, the fate of Madelyne Pryor, and whether or not she is worthy of existing on Krakoa, and more importantly, any other clones of other characters in the history of the X-Men, and just as well, what will happen to the original Recipe Marauders. That's right, we're gonna talk about all that and more right now, but first, wash your damn hands and let's hit that intro.
Word to wise, grass only greener when it's fertilized. Gave them truth in these songs, they prefer to lies. Destiny beautiful, adrift in her purple eyes. You can't see me, you Stevie, wondering how I reach more evolutions than Evie and make it look easy.
Before we get started, if you want to see more awesome comic book videos like this one, it only takes 2 clicks to become one of Earth's mightiest subscribers. Click.
Okay, so when we left off with this story, Madelyne Pryor had pretty much taken Havok hostage and pretty much gave away her plans for how she's going to run roughshod all over Krakoa, and she explains in grander detail exactly how she's going to do that, explaining to Havok that not only is she going to exploit all the clones that Mr. Sinister made at the Essex State Home for Foundlings, but she's also going to put something in each of them that is incredibly infernal. The demons that are at her beck and call, the goblins, the demon creatures at her command, those that she pretty much controlled, led to run roughshod on the X-Men in the pages of Inferno. She is going to let each of them inhabit the clones that she is going to have under her command. And that's exactly what she's trying to do right now. She is preparing to use the brunt of her powers to place each of those demons into one of the clones, and she's probably even going to put one in Havok as well. That said, this is actually weakening her hold on the other Marauders. So when Wildchild and Quanon pull up and start running fades, and by the way, I love the fact that, Quanon as Psylocke is just out here putting the hurt on fools. Wildchild is out here putting the stomp on kids. There's a funny point when Wildchild gets impaled and is laid out, and I love the fact that Quanon has become such a leader. She has become such a taskmaster for this team that when she sees this happen, she immediately takes a harpoon and rips it out of Wildchild and tells him to get back in the damn fight, and then immediately proceeds to fling said harpoon at Graycrow, intentionally missing Arclight, which allows him to catch the harpoon and use it to break free. And this is where we realize that Madelyne Pryor's hold on the original Recipe Marauders is failing because Arclight is starting to act normal again. So it once again, like where before this was a trick, this time it's for real. Because right now she is taking the Marauder clone farm and she is bringing everything online, and she is about to start filling them with the souls of the demonic creatures under her control. Now that that's said, Quanon, Graycrow, Wildchild, Nanny, Orphan Maker, they have a decision to make. They have to figure out what they're gonna do. What's the plan? How are they going to take down Madelyne Pryor? And Graycrow is gonna stay behind. He wants to make sure that the Marauders, his team, the team that he was a part of for so many years, he wants to make sure that they're taken care of, and Quanon is more than happy to leave him behind and let him do what he's got to do. Now, when we get back to Madelyne Pryor, because, she is working her powers, she is basically kind of like fawning over Havok and gloating over the fact that even though, his mentality has been saved from all the terrible things that Madelyne Pryor did to him, it only took one look at her to knock down that fragile house of cards. But Madelyne starts to realize maybe it was not her, in fact, who did this to him. The broken psyche that he possesses, maybe this wasn't her. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and say this probably is a callback to the Axis storyline. Your mileage with this storyline is going to vary. I was not the biggest fan of the storyline when it originally came out, and I've yet to go back and read it to see if I still feel that way. But basically what you need to know about Axis axis was that it was a storyline where the Red Skull and Scarlet Witch pretty much inverted a bunch of different heroes and villains in the Marvel Comics universe. Some of the more famous among them being characters like Iron Man, Carnage, Sabretooth, but Havok was actually one of the ones who was inverted, that once that storyline was over, Havok was pretty much one of the only ones, if the only one, who wasn't fixed. Now, later on down the road, he was eventually fixed by Emma Frost with some assistance from Polaris and Elixir, but part of me wonders what exactly Emma did to his mind. Just because she fixed his inversion doesn't mean she didn't leave something there, or maybe she didn't fix it as well as she thought she did. And that's actually something that's addressed a little later on, and we'll talk, and I won't get into exactly right here because I don't want to bury the lead, but that is something that is going to come up a little later in this book, is whether or not Emma did a good job of fixing Havok. That said, Graycrow is the one who puts a bullet right in Madelyne's heart, killing her, and Havok pretty much loses it. Now, as she is dying, she puts her hand on Havok's cheek, and you can see a little bit of magic being worked, and what's going on is that she actually is healing Havok. And it's something that's very interesting because as she's sitting there laying there dying, she mentions that, yeah, the ceremony, it's been stopped. There's nothing there, and that even the demons that she controls, they won't even hang around to even mourn her passing. Like, even the demons that she controls have no love for her. I mean, unsurprising. But she says that the only one who has been there for her this entire time has been Havok. And she heals Havok's scars from when she sealed his mouth shut and he ripped it open. And the one thing she begs for is to not be forgotten. And she wants the world to know that she was, in fact, a real girl. There is something else she wants to say, and it seems like what she was going to say was that she loved Havok, but she doesn't get to finish that sentence. And as a result of this, Havok, just like in Hellions #1, loses his absolute mind. He unleashes the full brunt of his power, and he destroys the clone farm under the Essex State Home for Foundlings. And when he does so, everybody is on a fast track to get the hell out of Dodge because he is bringing down the house and he doesn't really seem to care who goes with him. This is all a direct result of the pain and suffering that he has felt ever since the day that he was separated from Madelyne Pryor in the first place. The pain and suffering he felt for her when she was discarded by his brother Cyclops, and he himself was going through his own relationship woes. He missed her. He wanted her back in his life, and he finally got a taste of her back, even though he initially wanted nothing to do with her, but all those old feelings came back. Luckily, everyone is able to escape, and of course, Havok, once everything is all said and done, he emerges from the rubble, and he doesn't really remember anything. Damn, son. That's kind of how I felt about it. But at the end of it all, they kind of have this moment that's very reminiscent of, like, the old 80s cartoons, whatever, everybody saves the day and they have that moment to all sit back and laugh. That's what it kind of reminds me of, because Wild Child exclaims that, oh, they were right. We're a bunch of crazy sons of bitches. And everyone's laughing. Even Orphan Maker is laughing, though Nanny doesn't want him to laugh, but he's gonna laugh anyway. The most interesting part of this book to me, honestly, though, was the post-mission report, where we learned that, yeah, the Hellions, they were successful, they cleared their mission, they did exactly what they were sent out to do, and we get to learn exactly what was the mission breakdown for each of the characters. They say that Havok is the one who they are most concerned about. They feel that he experienced a prolonged episode of disassociation in which the demons that haunt him were very much behind the wheel, basically citing the fact that his past, the things that haunt him, the things he's done, that was what was ruling him, not his own self. This isn't a reference to Madelyne Pryor's demonic creatures. And of course, we bring up the fact that Emma Frost is the one who gave him the post-event psy care, and basically, yeah, she has reported that he has had some kind of sporadic memory loss, and he doesn't really seem to be all that there. Like, he seems to kind of be distancing himself from everything that happened. The fact that he remembers Madelyne Pryor being killed, but not necessarily remembering who did it, which is something I think is going to pay dividends down the road. I think Havok and Graycrow are going to wind up eventually having it out later, some issues down the road. Not right away, but definitely later. The fact that he doesn't remember and doesn't seem interested just doesn't seem on brand for him. So some part of me thinks that maybe he's just hiding something, and maybe he's gotten very good at it. I mean, Emma is a telepath, but at the same time, I mean, hey, you want something hidden, you want it hidden. And of course, they bring up the fact that Emma seems hesitant in trying to do even more with Havok, considering the fact that, she did a quotey fingers bang up job fixing him, the quotey fingers last time. And once again, this is in reference to Axis. And of course, the mission report, likely written by Nightcrawler, maybe possibly Cyclops, I'm not 100% sure yet, but whoever is writing this, it's safe to say that they don't think that Emma's lying, but at the same time, they don't necessarily not think it either. And then when it comes to the former character Scalp Hunter, now known as Graycrow, we learn that he has basically been pining for his teammates, his lost teammates in the original recipe Marauders. He wants them to be brought back, and more importantly, he wants them to be brought back with as few of Mr. Sinister's modifications as humanly possible. Though at the same time, he doesn't want to be a part of that team. He doesn't want them brought back because he feels like he wants to get the band back together. He wants them to be back because he bled with them. He fought alongside them. He wants them to have the same chance at happiness and peace that he now has. But he also feels like, just like a group of old friends who used to be friends and somehow drifted apart because they just didn't click anymore, he feels like they need to go their separate ways. Now, the reason why I'm saying this, you're probably saying, oh wait, what happened to the other Marauders? Well, let's go back a little bit. When he sent Quanon away so that he could handle his business before catching up with him, Graycrow stayed behind and he killed every last single one of the original recipe Marauders that were cloned that they fought against, including Arclight. And later on, it is why when Quanon approaches him, letting him know that as she refers to as the Legacy Marauders being approved for resurrection, yeah, that's a good thing. This is a good thing. This is something that's good that's gonna happen. And that she didn't let him do it because she felt like she owed him something. She wasn't doing it to be nice. She felt that Krakoa doesn't ask you to deny your nature and that the Hellions were created for a reason. As she says, a dog will hunt and we must rest peace wherever we find it, because Quanon, if anyone understands what it's like to be used as a tool, as a weapon, it would be her. And she completely understands where Graycrow is coming from, and I'm very curious to see if there is a budding relationship that's going to grow out of this between Psylocke and Graycrow, and with Wildchild as the pet between them. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I'm not going to lie, I wouldn't be upset if it did. And then of course we learn that Empath, who was really the only character who was killed in action, they say that only wry smiles were offered as an explanation for him not returning. The Quiet Council has agreed that this was expected and within the tolerance of the parameters that they set for the team. Basically saying that, yeah, we kind of figured you guys were gonna f him up, and you know what? So be it. And then when we get to Wildchild, we learn that, yeah, he's calmed down considerably, and that he only shows aggression when he perceives a threat to his new alpha Psylocke, whom now he pretty much worships the ground she walks on. And that Psylocke is basically, though she may not necessarily be completely down for the idea, she is just allowing it to happen because, hey, why not? If you could have a pet attack dog, the likes of Wildchild, who loves you unconditionally and will do anything for you, I mean, would you really turn that down? And then, of course, when we get to the character Nanny, well, that's when things get even more interesting because Nanny appears to have been traumatized by the events that took place at the Essex State Home for Foundlings. This is in relation when they say to the misdeeds of Mr. Sinister's past being seen up close. What they're referring to is when they find, as they're looking for Madelyne Pryor, they find the waste products of Sinister's failed experiments, finding what appear to be a child's limb. And of course, as it would be for anyone, none of this really sits right with Nanny. Like, she actually is pissed off about it, like to the point that it's actually thrown her off her game, because there's even a point in the report where it's said that she actually had to be reminded to feed Orphan Maker, something that would never have been an issue beforehand because she cares so much for it. While this all may seem, off the books and crazy, Emma Frost does believe that if Nanny allows herself to feel anything, it has to be a good thing and will only help her get past the trauma. And as far as the reports go, they say that on the whole, there seems to have been a cathartic value to the mission, with the side effect being that, of course, not including the idea that Empath was killed by the team, but once again, they knew there would be risk. And when they say that they knew they'd be taking mulligans on him, and I say mulligans meaning plural, that means they expect Empath to probably be what Kid Omega is for Dawn of X for all the other X titles. Empath will probably be for this team. He will probably get killed in almost every issue that he is in, and maybe that's a good thing, maybe that's a bad thing, I don't know. I'm curious to see where it goes. And when they talk about how the team did, they say, yeah, the team was able to let loose effectively, as evidenced by the decimated orphanage left in their wake. So the thing that they wanted them to do, the demolition purposes they were supposed to serve, it worked. Where things get interesting is when they talk about human casualties, because they say that aside from the Marauders, Madelyne Pryor, she was felled as a combatant, and though technically she wasn't exactly human anyway, the council had to make a decision, and the decision was to be considered if whether or not she should be treated as just, a clone of Jean Grey, or a mutant who stands on her own, independent of being a clone of another character. Whether or not they can figure this out will determine whether or not she could be resurrected and maybe somehow rehabilitated and allowed to walk free on Krakoan ground. This is something that was a huge point of contention for her, and the reason that she was doing what she was doing. She felt that she was slighted. She felt that she should have been allowed to exist on Krakoa. If all these other villains were allowed to walk free, why not herself? She has only done as badly as any of the others. If Apocalypse can roam free, if Magneto can roam free, if Selene can roam free, if Omega Red is allowed to roam free, why not her? And we learn the answer for this is that it's not going to happen. Cyclops tells Havok that the council voted and they voted no. The fact that, yes, even though she did technically stand on her own and she did have her own personality seemingly, she is still a clone of Jean Grey, and they shouldn't have clones on the island. This kind of lends some credence to the notion why, some people ask about certain characters, like, why don't they have the older version of Cable? Why isn't X-Man around? Why aren't these characters around? Why isn't that character around? And in a lot of cases, your question could probably be answered by just asking yourself, is this character a clone of another character, or is this character a time divergent or reality displaced version of another character? And that will probably answer all your questions as to why certain characters aren't on Krakoa. But one of the things I love here is that Havok, he tries to tell Scott that she was a real person. She existed. Madelyne Pryor, despite what y'all may think about her, she is real. She is not someone who is to be easily discarded. She shouldn't be forgotten, and she does deserve to be resurrected. And I'm actually going to go ahead and say that myself. I do think Madelyne Pryor deserves to be resurrected. I do think that she is no worse than any of the other characters they've allowed to roam free. There are characters in the X-Men's midst right now who have done great and terrible things. Characters who have had entire crossover Marvel line-wide events dedicated to their Why should Madelyne Pryor be treated any different than those characters who posed such a great and terrible threat to not just the X-Men, but the universe as a whole? I mean, hell, Vulcan is allowed to walk free. Now, one of the things that I think is very interesting about the book, and this is how we're going to close this out, and we're actually going to talk a little bit more about Nanny and some of the f***ery that happened at the Essex State Home for Foundlings, and that is when Sinister is sitting there giggling about how Alex Summers is being haunted by the fact that Madelyne Pryor was killed and is not allowed to be resurrected. It's Nanny who sneaks up on Sinister and tells him that, I know what you did. I saw everything. I saw every last single one of the dead mutant children that you had discarded like they were refuse. And she's letting him know right off the rip, this will not stand and that he will answer for what he's done. Now, Sinister does make some very interesting points, stating that he should be above it all, because if it were not for his experiments, if it were not for those things that he discarded, Krakoa would not have resurrection as we know it. Yeah, it is actually very true that yes, Sinister did technically make resurrection possible for Krakoa. Pretty much everyone who has been resurrected, they do kind of owe their lives to Mr. Sinister. The part I think where he gets a little too big for his britches is where he says that Daddy gives the spankings, he doesn't bend over and take them. And this is where Nanny asks him a very simple question. How many mutants have been resurrected. And when Sinister answers that he would have to look up the numbers, Nanny replies that when I come to punish you, I want to know how many orphans it will make. And I gotta admit, oh man, God, this book is so damn good. I'm gonna go ahead and say right now, if you guys are not reading this book, oh my God, you are doing yourself a tremendous disservice. This is, and I'm gonna go ahead and say it right now, this is definitively the best book right now in the entire X-Men line. I'm just going to say it. I'm not even being hyperbolic anymore when I say that. This is, in fact, the best book in the entire Dawn of X lineup. Let's just go ahead. Can we just go ahead and say it? Can we go ahead and put all the other ones to bed? Send everybody else home. Send X-Force, send Marauders, send Doom Mutants, Excalibur, Wolverine, all that shit. Send the shit home. This is the book to be reading. I'm not saying the other books are bad. I love X-Force. I love Marauders. I think they are fantastic books. And those were my favorite books before this one came along, and Hellions came along. And I'm gonna tell you why. They made me care about a cast of characters I didn't give a about before reading this. Maybe except for Quantum and Mr. Sinister. I was never the biggest fan of Havok. I was never the biggest fan of Graycrow as Scalp Hunter. I never was the biggest fan of characters like Nanny and Orphan Maker, and I really didn't give a shit about Empath. And Wild Child was just a character who I was aware of and thought he was cool in Age of Apocalypse, and very little else. But yeah, seeing this and how they've made these characters important and special, oh God, I just love it. It is so good. But anyways, let me know what you think about Hellions #4 by Zeb Wells and Steven Segovia. Wash your damn hands and sound off in the comments.
So hey, you made it to the end of the video. Awesome for you. If you enjoyed this video, and if you made it this far, I don't see how you didn't, do me a favor. Hulk smash that like button. And if you want to see more awesome videos like this one, make sure you click subscribe so you can become one of Earth's mightiest subscribers, and tap that bell so you know when I post up. Also, feel free to go check out my Patreon, where if you chuck in a buck, you can get early access to most of my videos up to a week early. And if you have time, make sure you swing by nerd901.com, where you can find more of my content as well as other amazing stuff. Anyways, until next time, I love you 3000 plus Ultra!